Welcome to the Global News Podcast, where we go behind the headlines of a story and why it really matters. On this episode, we are discussing the US Justice Department and its order to release the files on Jeffrey Epstein. Donald Trump first promised during his election campaign he would release the so-called Epstein files. But then President Trump has spent his time in office blocking all efforts to release them, to the anger of many. Now, American politicians have cleared the path for the Justice Department to release them, marking a major U-turn for Donald Trump over the issue, who says he will sign the legislation as soon as he gets it. I'm joined by our Chief North America correspondent, Gary O'Donoghue. Gary, so first up, just tell us where we're at with the process of these Epstein files and when they might get released.
So where we're at with the process is that Congress, in other words, the House of Representatives, the lower house, if you like, and the Senate, the upper house, have both approved this legislation. I mean, overwhelmingly in the case of the House, 427 votes to 1, a handful of people not voting. And then in the Senate it was effectively nodded through without any discussion, amendment, or anything like that. I mean, it happened in a matter of moments in the Senate. So this bill, what happens to it before it can become law, it goes to the president and he has to sign it. And he has a choice. He can sign it like that, as they do, and you've seen many of those signing ceremonies where they use multiple pens, and the president signs the first letter and hands one of the pens to someone who's been involved and another one hands another a pen. So you could do all that with a lot of sort of razzmatazz, or he could simply do it behind closed doors. But the other option he has as president is to veto that bill, and then it would require to go back to Congress, and then a substantial majority, 2/3 of Congress would have to vote to pass it, to override that veto. Now, I don't think there's much chance of a veto, but there is a slim chance because some Republicans, including the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, wanted changes made to that bill in the Senate, and that didn't happen. And so there may be some Republicans trying to get in the presidency to say, look, veto it and send it back and we can make some changes. We'll see. We'll see what happens. All we've heard from the president since that happened is one of his social media posts where he says, I don't care when the Senate passes this. I just want Republicans to focus on our victories. And then he gives a whole load of list of things that he regards as the administration's victories. So that's where we are in the process right now.
If there aren't any delays, we could possibly see the files released in the next 30 days or so from the time of recording. So what could we expect? Because a lot of people are maybe expecting explosive details to come out of these files. They've been long awaited.
We have no idea what they've got. We know they've probably got quite a lot because there were a lot of federal investigations into Epstein stretching back, back way into the early 2000s, etc. And we know that quite a lot of material has already been released, some of it from the Epstein estate, some of it from investigations as well, some of it from what the congressional committee that's been looking into this has taken in terms of evidence and depositions and all that kind of thing. But there could be an awful lot. And you're right, it's a 30-day deadline that DOJ have. There are some caveats in the bill. There's some protections, for example, for ongoing prosecutions, for example, material relating to those. Ironically, of course, just days ago, the president ordered the DOJ to start looking into Democrats' involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. So ironically, for those Republicans who believe there was a lot of political possibilities in exposing Democrats' connections to Jeffrey Epstein, some of that might be protected under the very bill they've just passed. So we'll see how that plays out. And there are some protections for privacy issues around invasion of privacy, particularly for survivors of Epstein. But those will be tested and they have to be justified. And then it has to be made available, as you say, 30 days in what they describe as a searchable and downloadable form. And what that seems to mean is that, unlike with a lot of material, which kind of is scanned documents, pictures of emails that takes hours to sift through, people can start sticking in names, sticking in places, sticking in dates, sticking in anything they like to this stuff and coming up with potentially more revelations about Epstein's relationships with people, who he knew, who hobnobbed with him, who spent time with him, who went to his private island, used his private jet, what his connections were, and when these people broke off those connections, if they did, and what they knew about what he was up to. So there is a huge potential for really this story to continue. So far from this legislation, even though it's a 180-degree turn on the part of the president, he was opposed to it last week, he's for it this week, it doesn't necessarily lance the boil of the Epstein story in terms of the fact that it has occupied so much political oxygen in this town that the president has been frustrated, angry, furious, I would say, that he hasn't been able to get out on the front foot on other things where he thinks he and his administration are doing really well.
It certainly caused some political problems for him, Gary, within his own Republican Party and within his own MAGA supporter base too.
Yeah, and you have to say, I think, some of this of his own making. It was a very convenient rallying cry on the campaign trail. We knew that a lot of his supporters believed that the whole Epstein affair had been sort of covered up by the establishment. It became emblematic of establishment, deep state cover-ups, protecting the rich, the powerful, the wealthy, which is, one of those kind of key sort of backbone issues for MAGA. They believe there is this conspiracy going on against ordinary people. And it came to symbolise that. And he played on that during the campaign, said, well, we're going to release all the stuff, etc., etc. Some of the key people in his administration now were saying that loud and clear on the campaign as well. And then come January this year, when he takes up the presidential post and gets into the White House, he kind of does a bit of a volte-face on that and says, no, we don't need to do this. This is a Democrat hoax. It's a distraction. Move on, guys. And the problem is the base did not move on. And a number of people in his own party in Congress did not move on. And we got this investigation. Now, the Justice Department has attempted, it did go to a judge and asked to be able to release some grand jury testimony, which is barely ever released, quite honestly. That failed. So they have turned around and said, look, we have tried to release some stuff and we have released some other stuff. But the bulk of it doesn't seem to have been released. And so that is what everyone will be focusing in the next 30 days.
Will the release of the Epstein files close the chapter, or will there remain speculation about further information that hasn't come to light?
I mean, I think it's become such a thing for one element of the Republican base. And this has in some ways been fueled by Democrats who now see a political opportunity in all this. Of course, the Democrats didn't release any of this stuff while Joe Biden was president. They could have done. They didn't. So I think this has become such a thing that there will be elements that will always think that they're not being told enough about the rich and the powerful. The idea of the rich and the powerful, getting away with it, playing by different rules to the little guy trying to make ends meet for his family, trying to put his kids through college, etc. It's an incredibly powerful and central theme to the whole MAGA appeal. This is something Donald Trump understood. People who feel they were being left behind economically, feel they were being left behind socially, feeling that a lot of their values were being sort of trashed, if you like, by modern day life. A lot of them bought into this thing that this was the establishment and the deep state that was undermining the American way of life, and it's going to take an awful lot to persuade them. And the problem for Donald Trump, of course, and we've got midterm elections next year, is that he was their champion. He was the guy who got it, and some of them now, are starting to feel that he doesn't get it.
Thanks to Gary in Washington. And a reminder, if you want more on this story and other world news, then please download our Global News podcast. You can find that from wherever you download your podcast from. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please leave us a comment below if there are any other stories you would like us to cover in more detail. For now, thanks so much for watching.